Okay, I will now read an article that I've made for a website called Mad in America concerning metaphors in psychiatry. I've done this so that it will be easier to follow the article, and of course some of you might only want to watch it here on YouTube. Okay, metaphors in psychiatry. Metaphors have been used for improving communication since the beginning of recorded history. Court metaphor for drug research. Currently, almost all research on drugs for psychological problems is done by the pharmaceutical companies. They study their own drugs to find out if they are effective. They actually study their own drugs that they can make billions on if proven marginally effective on vaguely defined symptoms. Here is very little research done by independent researchers. The little that is done is meta-analysis, a systematic compilation of the same studies done by manufacturers. Companies publish only what they want. They can choose not to publish trials showing that the drugs are harmful or have no effect, and if they find a positive effect in a few studies, they can publish them as many times as they want. FDA requires only 2 positive trials to approve a drug. In a worst-case scenario, a company can do 100 trials of an antidepressant, and even if 98 of them show harm and no positive effect, the drug will be approved. If the company can come up with 2 trials that show benefit and acceptable harms, even if this is after considerable massaging of the data. Since something is judged as good or bad, it's natural to use a court case as a metaphor to clearly see how wrong this is. The person on trial gets to produce just the evidence he wants. He does his own DNA testing, presents only witnesses favorable to him, and if this is not bad enough, he's also his own judge and his own jury, or he fills up the jury with only people who work for him, like journal editors who need pharma advertising to survive. Can we expect a guilty verdict? Obviously not. Another metaphor is Coca-Cola Company deciding if Coke is better than Pepsi. The mind-blowing result of these metaphors is that we realize that what we call evidence-based treatment is worse than having no evidence at all. It is really evidence-biased treatment. Okay, drug metaphors. Giving a drug for a psychological problem can often mask the reason for the suffering. For instance, depression because of relationship problems, ADHD concentration problems because of bullying. Giving drugs for these problems without doing everything to remedy the cause would be like giving you a painkiller if you have a broken ankle and just continue walking. With enough numbing, you would be able to walk, but would it help in the long run? You would need more and more painkiller, and the ankle would never heal. Could there still be use for numbing drugs? Yes, of course. I ask for painkillers if I have a very bad headache or a broken ankle, but that would be temporary. And I would try to find out what was wrong and do something about it right away. I would never want to take the drugs permanently. Drugging may also be just like giving painkillers to somebody with an infected wound without disinfecting the wound. This can numb the pain but be very dangerous. You have stepped on a nail. It is sticking out of your foot. You put the bandage on and take a strong painkiller but leave the nail there. This is similar to not removing what made you depressed in the first place, but just numbing the feelings with an antidepressant. Drugs may also be thought of as a crutch. A crutch could enable you to function if your ankle was broken, but I would not want to become a permanent crutch user. The usual treatment for a broken ankle or bone would be to have a competent person align the relevant bones, immobilize the area, and then rely on the body's spontaneous healing process. If I had been left in the wilderness with my broken ankle, pain would have made me keep it as immobile as possible until it healed. I would probably be able to walk again, but likely with a limp. If a physician had used evidence-based methods such as X-ray anatomical charts of what the healthy ankle looks like, the result would be close to perfect. But I would have to not walk on it for some weeks. If we translate this to treatment for depression, we may get many insights. First of all, there is a reason why the ankle broke. We would not start looking for a vulnerability for breaking ankles. Anybody who has broken an ankle by jumping from 10 feet down on concrete will avoid doing this in the future, without thinking that they had an underlying ankle breaking syndrome. There is a reason why you became depressed. Some get more easily depressed than others, just like some break their ankles more easily. But the reason for the depression is what you can do something about. You can get out of that horrible job or relationship just like you can avoid jumping from 10 feet. If you just numb the psychological pain, then you would be able to stay in the bad situation. With enough painkillers, you can continue jumping from 10 feet. Computer metaphors can also be quite useful. Doctors have used chemical imbalance as an explanation for both depression and psychosis. The solution is to restore balance with more chemicals. This would be like fixing a fault in a software by changing the voltage on certain parts of the computer. If there were offensive videos playing, we would disable the video card so that they would not show up on the screen. Electroshock would be like giving the computer a voltage surge until the video stopped playing. Of course, the normal solution would be to find out what had started the video playing in the first place and then give instructions in language that the computer could understand, mouse clicks and keyboard presses, instead of brutal physical interventions affecting the whole system. Sometimes doctors say that the chemical imbalance explanation is just a metaphor. However, the metaphor breaks down quickly, quite quickly. SSRI prevents the nerve cells from recycling serotonin. Half-used serotonin is kept in the synapse. It is like we have fired the garbage collectors and shut down the recycling plant. No wonder many feel numbed by SSRIs. Antipsychotics were developed to attempt to find better anesthesia. If antipsychotics are given in high enough doses, the patient loses consciousness. Could they be used for anesthesia states in psychological suffering? Yes, but only very temporary in order to get through a very rough experience. And most of us would not like to go through surgery without anesthesia, but we would certainly react strongly if we were told that we were going to be anesthetized for the rest of our lives. Through these metaphors, we may come to the conclusion that some drugs may be very useful in very short intervals. For instance, a painkiller or anesthesia so that the wound might be cleaned or sutured or a bullet removed. The point is that the drug is used in order to be able to do something with the problem. Cleaning the wound, stopping the bullying, discussing the marriage problems, making the classroom more interesting. And then we have some more positive metaphors. Psychotherapy can be likened to reprogramming our brain through experience. For instance, the experience of a good therapeutic relationship or success in exposure therapy. We have many rules in our minds that guide our feelings and behaviors. For instance, if mother has a smile on her face while looking into my eyes, then good feelings are released and the behavior that preceded the smile is coded as likely to bring smiles in the future. In other words, we learn. And then, for more psychological problems, if hands do not feel completely clean, then wash again. OCD. Or if I feel fat, then I will not eat today. For anorexia. Reprogramming for the OCD would be, if I feel dirty, then resist the urge to wash. This will make me stronger and cure my OCD. Exposure therapy. Or, a little dirt is good for me, it builds my immune system. If a person really believed that, instead of believing that it's important to have the hands surgically clean, they would be rid of their problem. Okay, the settings metaphor. Often therapy may be likened to adjusting the settings of your carefulness program. This is a good mental program that everyone needs, but the settings are too high when you have a problem. Hand washing is good in general, but OCD sufferers have a setting for clean enough, which is too high and may therefore clean their hands for hours. However, if you're a surgeon preparing for surgery, this OCD setting may be quite useful. In other words, therapy is getting the right setting for the situation. Often the only way to change these settings is to experience that it is safe to have other settings. This may be done through exposure therapy. Often you cannot change the settings just by being told to change. You need to experience the safety of changing settings gradually. One result of thinking like this, with the programming metaphor, is that you realize that there are no mental illnesses, just settings that are not adapted to the situations. If you're anxious, you have too high settings for danger. If you're depressed, you have too high settings for how useful it is to think of negative things. If you have hallucinations, the realness settings of thoughts is too high. For delusions, the conviction setting is too high. The beauty is that all of these settings may be changed. The brain training metaphor. We all have many experiences of getting better or stronger through training or practice. The same obviously applies for brain processes that govern feelings. After all, our strong experiences of learning new skills are related to the brain. We have learned to walk, read, ride a bike, and maybe even mastering a foreign language. These skills seem almost impossible before we learn them. In the same way, we can train our brains to react in different ways. A good example is the ability to think positively in almost any situation, which can be learned. Martin Seligman has termed this learned optimism. However, optimism is not always positive. The settings for optimism should be adapted to the situation. Lawyers benefit from a low level of optimism when they prepare to meet the opponent's argument. Manic episodes may be seen as too high optimism settings. The ability to see the positive in the negative may be learned and practiced. One simple method for doing this is to write down every day a few sentences about 3 good things that have happened lately. If this is hard for you, you probably need this training very much, and doing it will make a big difference. If it's very easy, you're in good psychological shape and don't have to train that much. Metaphors can be very powerful, both to help our understanding of what is wrong with psychiatry and how we may understand our minds in positive ways. If symptoms are just signs that settings are off and settings can be changed, we can have hope. If we can learn better mental strategies, just like we learned to walk and talk, there is hope for everyone.